Happy late afternoon, everybody. Welcome, Everettonians. Today is Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. We are here in Council Chambers. We are at our first Parks and Built Environment Committee meeting for the year. At our retreat about a month ago, we worked on redoing our committee structures, and so with the fourth and when occurring fifth Wednesday of the month, moving to a 12:30 meeting. We're consolidating our committees to just the first Wednesday of the month is the Health and Safe Community Committee. The second Wednesday tonight is the Parks and Built Environment Committee, and then the third Wednesday is typically the COW Committee, or Committee of the Whole. For Parks and Built Environment Committee, we combined a couple of the previous committees. So subject matters that we'll be covering in this committee include work done by the Planning Department, Public Works, Parks and Facilities, Library, Animal Shelter, Code Enforcement, Transportation, Transit, and Economic Development. Tonight we have a few things on our agenda. First, we're going to be, I'd like to introduce the other co-chair, Councilmember Liz Vogely. Councilmember Ben Zarlingo is the other committee member, and Jennifer Gregerson's also here this evening.
That one? I found a pen. Thank you. I'm also a council member, and I'm just seeing which camera is now the one.
Back there.
The TV is there, but that's the one that's seeing us?
Yeah, you can see.
Oh, hi. Okay. Hello. All right. Great. Sorry.
No worries.
I'm here and know where I'm. What?
If you want to.
It doesn't matter.
All right, so tonight we have 3 agenda items. First, we're going to be revisiting a discussion that we had a couple times previously in committees about downtown storefronts and facade maintenance. So we'll open it up for committee discussion and possibly policy direction as well. Each of the committees, as also discussed during our retreat last month, were asked to come up with priorities and a work plan goal for the year. So just to help provide the committees with a goal and a structure for the year and a finish line too for accomplishments. And then I will also be discussing next meeting agenda topics. I have a list somewhere here in my virtual and physical desktop of past meeting topics that we're combining, so we can sort through and see which things are still relevant and which things we could probably move to the thank you pile. So first on our agenda is the Downtown Storefronts and Facade Maintenance Committee discussion. I think I was looking up some previous notes, and we had discussed this in August of 2023, and we had a couple folks from staff here, Tyler Chisholm, and I believe Dan Ernessy as well, to share more about some of the initiatives that our planning and community development team have been working on to encourage vacant storefronts and business owners that maybe have shades in their front windows to put up different lighting or artwork or wraps in their front windows or a rolling art display of some sort, just to help with downtown vibrancy. Thank you. Good. And then we had another discussion last February, about exactly a year ago, to discuss a vacancy tax downtown, which has been put on hold. And also but to talk more about, the stick and the carrot side of things. So Tyler had shared about the carrot portion of encouraging business owners to improve vacant storefronts. And so then there was also a brief discussion about our current policies and our current code that requires certain levels of maintenance for downtown businesses to maintain, including vacant businesses. So I'd be happy to open the floor for discussion. I know Councilmember Vogely did a walking tour recently downtown to take some different pictures to show the breadth of different storefront maintenance work and or not. So if I could pass it along to you, that'd be great.
Yes. First, I wanted to also pass out, I only made 3 copies, but it's easily found online. Chapter 1616 in our municipal code. It is the maintenance of vacant commercial space in the central business district. I did not look at the map to see what exactly the central business district is. I always think of Seattle when I think of the CD. So it might very well be the metro sub-area zone. Could be right, could be wrong. I'm not sure, but I think it's downtown.
It predates the downtown metro plan, so I think if the code were to be updated, we'd want to, I think, mesh that with the current language. But I think for purposes of discussion, it's
Right.
basically
Downtown.
Yeah.
And yeah, I went around on beautiful, sunny, cold Monday, I think. Yeah, it was Monday. And today's Wednesday, so 2 days ago. So these I took current photos and I put them together, and I only made one copy, and I put a lot of pictures. I collaged them, so I'll pass them around. But I want to preface this with. I took pictures of what I thought were nice looking and not nice looking. I did not write the addresses down, but it's going to be obvious because we see them. So yeah, I'll just, and most of them, so we have lots of beautiful buildings, some old, some new, and I cropped a lot of the photos for just, that first floor walking portion. So I'll just start. I've seen these, obviously, but
That's a question that kind of comes up, maybe now's a good time to answer it. Do the regulations primarily focus or exclusively focus on the first floor? Is that what we're going to say is our focus for these efforts?
Yeah, I see in the code it says maintain all exterior surfaces, so I would guess it would be
The whole thing?
the whole thing, yep.
Okay.
and when I read storefront, I thought not the apartments above,
Yeah.
but maybe that is a thing because we just talked about it. So as I am passing some of these things around, I will say out loud, some places have bright reflective windows, especially in the sunshine. Some have empty awnings, the metal framework of an awning, and very flat, like frosted windows. Some are painted, newly painted. Some have signs in there. There's even there's such a plethora of differences. It's truly amazing. I don't know. I mean, I like aesthetics, and So, the old birthing center, Cascade Midwives, which isn't there anymore, but next to the new ice cream bar. There's a picture of that. And what was my point? I remember when I utilized Cascade Midwives, there was more of an alcove, going in, and that's now, there's no place to get under the weather. That is a different photo that I will talk about in a minute. There's foil that's kind of like haphazardly draped, partial words that haven't been all the way scraped off of certain places. There's an entire building that is should not even be standing because the snow, I think, brought it down. It's very ugly. You'll see. Yeah, and I said that out loud. So, and it's, the difference between, it's the same building. It's two different businesses. One may be empty and one utilized. And in two different respects, the utilized one is ugly and the vacant one is nice looking. Or oppositely, the vacant is just, I don't know, not doing well. But that there are people willing to make an effort. Yeah. And I'm not sure if that, one thing I wanted to, so there is the store, it's not a storefront, it's empty or practically empty that I just said was really ugly. It's, I'm looking at it right now, but I know that you can't even. The graffiti is nice, but the building should be condemned if it isn't already. And then in direct difference. There's another empty lot where there used to be a building. It has been torn down. The lot is nicely kept. And so you can see the contrast on this particular page of two lots that are basically empty, but one is, I don't know if that counts as a storefront because it's a empty-ish lot, but I think it's part of the facade dealings. So, and I will make sure that those photographs get to the clerk to be in the minutes and whatever, so that anybody can see them, if they want. So yeah, that is something that I did, and it just brought to my attention that I didn't see any. You know what? I'm gonna stop there and see if anybody has any, well, you know, it's supposed to look like this according to chapter 1616, if you've looked through it. And, yeah, since it's a discussion and not a
Sure.
monologue.
Yeah, I think something I have heard from when I met with representatives from the Downtown Everett Association, I think Tyler brought it up, and then it's also in code, is a requirement and encouragement to have transparent windows on the first floor. So some businesses, they might have sensitive things happening, like the birthing center, where it might not be appropriate. And I think we had worked in allowances for situations like that. But in general, if there's an active business, the non-transparent windows doesn't help negative activities on the street, because it's not giving a perception that folks are watching. And so there's a bit of a tension between people using the business and people outside of the business who might be using the sidewalk. And if there were transparent windows, that might help with just a more welcoming space in general when you're walking down the sidewalk, so it doesn't feel like just like a wall next to you. It's more inviting to go into places. So if part of the policy review could include the transparent windows policies, I think that would be really helpful.
And there are responsibilities and fines for not doing, we have a code. So I guess, and whether or not it's as it should be right now, there are still requirements, general minimum maintenance requirements. So does it take I don't want to be a meanie to the businesses, that's not my point here, but I have been going downtown for 10 years, and there are still some of the same buildings with the same looks to them, and that I think like are against the rules. So code enforcement?
Yeah, I think the way this usually goes is it's code enforcement based on a complaint. I think that's what usually works in that sequence. And then there had been discussions before about, well, should there be some sort of a tax or a fee for vacant space? And then if I remember right, there were parts of that were kind of held off during the pandemic time. I
Right.
think you had mentioned that, Councilmember Ryan, before when we were discussing this. That's what I know so far.
And there is the fee in our code as well, but that had, I think we didn't have the staffing to run the program, so that isn't happening right now. But there are other codes in here for window displays for commercial spaces not occupied for 30 days. So there is a minimum requirement for the places you've been seeing downtown for 10 years to have something in their window. So I guess if I can put you on the spot, Jennifer, like, what recommendation would you have for like reporting, or what is the staff end of this for how they would respond to a situation like this?
I think starting with a code enforcement complaint is a logical place. There's the vacant commercial space piece, which has to do with when they're vacant, what they look like. And then there's the building transparency which is in chapter 19, more of like the building code. So it's like 45 to 90% of windows should be transparent. There's even a picture that looks like lots of those storefronts. You can have like pilings, but you gotta have some windows that, and I think when you reached out to businesses, you probably had that conversation too about, the building code is gonna get you the glass windows, but what about the blinds that go down? Or, I mean, in some cases, I guess
Wet, moisture-ridden draperies that are collecting mold within a large picture window
other
on Wetmore,
materials.
close to
sure.
Funco.
Yeah. I don't know exactly how, like, what enforcement looks like once they're in, and if there is enough language in the code that refers to not only like the glass material being transparent, but also do you get to you built the building and now you get to do what you want inside of it? Okay, that's like sometimes how the rules go. Does that mean you just put some solid blinds up? That's not really meeting the spirit of that vision either, so.
Well, and then I look at Funco too, not the toy store, but across the street, and I'll call it a mural, but I don't think it's painted. Their entire window display is fun and loud and vibrant, but totally you can't see through it. So it's like a wall, but it's a fun wall. So that would go, I don't know about against, but you can't see through it. So there's walking down the sidewalk and doing whatever you're doing in the building.
It makes me think that, some flexibility in this makes sense. You don't want to be dogmatic about it. But the other part is that with limited resources to do something about this, I'm wondering if there's a way to get, kind of early on in this process, a consensus of what we think are the most important things to work on. Which are the things that are the most impactful, where we, either do the most damage or at least are the most unhelpful. If we're going to make progress on this, I suspect that it's going to mean narrowing our focus that way. And I'm not sure what that would be. I should spend more time walking around downtown.
Yeah, I think last time we discussed it, the 30-day trigger for some of these things kicking in was way too stringent. So I think we all wanted to be a lot more flexible on that timeline. 616 or 1616-060 does allow for paint in windows with visually appealing scenes depicting or suggesting business or cultural activities. So that might be helpful. Yeah, I think there could be some work and collaboration with building owners as well about what the barriers are that they're experiencing to fill vacancies. And I know the Downtown Everett Association just finished up their first round of storefront enhancement grants, which went really well. There were 11 businesses downtown in the DEA vicinity that utilized those, and they have a second round open now, which helps with some of the awnings and some of the other storefront enhancements. So work is happening, which is exciting, but some spaces, like you mentioned, don't seem to want to comply. So I'd like to see, then they have been not complying for a long time on something, a space as amazing as like Hewitt Avenue. We should be doing what we can to make sure that Hewitt is as vibrant as possible, especially we're going to have the Creative Arts District designation soon and all the other things that are coming down the pike. So I think updating the vacant storefront policy would be great. I think we had talked before about how the zone itself doesn't necessarily apply. So that would be a key update, but then also if there's anywhere in our comp plan that we can plug in some different goals and policy goals might be helpful as well, if it's not there already.
Has the Downtown Everett Association kind of weighed in on this, what they think would be the highest priorities? Clearly they're working on some of that because they're developing priorities for the grants that they're doing. They might be another source for kind of the other side of the grants, which is what should we take action on?
I don't know. And I also have a question with the Downtown Everett Association. I don't remember at this time if every single business downtown is a part of it. I remember going through the ESDA and how the people there, how all the businesses in the ESDA, you know, certain businesses buy into it. And so are like these grants, or are these enforcement, or are these communications with businesses downtown only with the ones that are paying in? Are people that aren't paying into the business district being, having, our discussions being had with them? And if not, why not? You know, do you, so that's, I mean, we don't have any Downtown Everett Association spokesperson here, and I didn't invite them, so sorry. But yeah, just had that thought, because I was speaking with a business, I think they're in the area, and wasn't about storefronts. It was about, well, some other big thing that's happening downtown in the near future. Yeah, just how are people brought to the table? Because it seems like a good table talk, you know, because we want nice things, and we have nice things, and like I was thinking about Evan Reed from Bunker Arts Collective. You know, I bet, not him, but there may be people out there that have like brilliant ideas for storefronts that might not be the city and not be the Downtown Everett Association, but want to help make a welcoming environment. So I'm just putting that out there.
I went to the DEA's year in review a couple weeks ago, and one of the things that they mentioned was that downtown had a vacancy rate of 8%, which is actually pretty low. But I'm not, when I walk around, I don't,
Doesn't feel like
it doesn't feel like that. So I'm not quite sure what the differentiation is between like what's considered vacant or not, I guess. But so that was a little bit surprising to me, but I did meet with DEA when this came up last year, and they had concerns about the tax itself and the fee for it. But I do think that there is a way to nudge building owners to be at least more compliant with, I mean, the wet drapes that you were mentioning and the silver, I don't know.
Tinfoil?
Tinfoil in the window.
Mylar. Maybe it's Mylar.
Like those types of things shouldn't, a responsible building owner should not be putting up at street level in our city. So, I would like to see some way to proactively reach out to provide a reminder of what our storefront facade maintenance minimum requirements are.
Yeah, I'm not sure in our current mechanism what that might be, but it strikes me that there might be a case for a kind of a working session sometime to gather some of the building owners, Downtown Everett Association, maybe this committee, someone from planning and code enforcement to knock around the possibilities and figure out the priorities. Because I think things are the way they are because it's kind of been that way, and that's what's practical, and because there are barriers to it, and I think a lack of focus, and that might be a way to do it, especially if the business owners themselves and the Downtown Everett Association are behind it and organize, or you know, are behind it, are part of the priorities of it. We might be able to get more done.
I mean, even as I just look at these, some of them you can tell they're in transition and something's going to be different soon. Others, I'm not, but that wasn't my point. Just looking at these, there's just such a major difference between crumply things and a nice flat surface. You know, that's crisp versus crunkle. Can tell, yeah, I'm not sure exactly where I was going with that, never mind.
Well, I'm just thinking that if we're going to do some sort of enforcement, it should be even-handed, should be seen that way, but I can also imagine that business owners, even though they might be griped or inconvenienced or harmed by some nearby activity or lack of maintenance or something, might be reluctant to go complaining about it. And I don't know what that landscape really is, but it's got a certain practical terrain to it that if we don't understand that, we probably aren't going to be doing a lot of good unless we just kind of universally do a whole bunch more enforcement. And I would rather those things be focused, that the enforcement be focused on a narrower group of the worst, the most damaged, the worst offenders, and the rest we do the carrots.
I had a note from this meeting with DA that I had a long time ago that says survey of blighted properties, and then it says Earnesty. So I'm not sure if that's something that had happened or if it was maybe in the works. But if there is especially if it's 5 years old or 6 years old at this point and those properties are still on the list, then that might be a good spot to start.
Yeah, good idea.
So I'm hearing that we might be moving into our second agenda item, which is setting a work plan for the year. Trying to find that email that I had from Jennifer.
I did reach out in March of 2024 to Dan and Tony in code enforcement. They said that Downtown Everett Association maintains the first ever thorough and updated list as part of their Main Street membership requirement, like Main Street America Association. And that's pretty complete with vacancies, sizes, contact information. We had talked about blighted properties. That's like a more of a technical term. So their list is like just here's all the properties, but has vacancy information in it. It looks like staff did do a community renewal area, like blighted survey in 2020. But it relates more to like undertaking a community renewal activity. And that's what I heard back at the time.
So it's clear there's been interest in this. There's been energy, but it's been kind of, other than the pandemic, it's been kind of dissipated. And I said that usually is because something is either not terribly workable or there just isn't enough priority behind a narrow enough set of things. That's why I'm thinking that maybe that could be one of the work plan things, is to consider a kind of a mini town hall or something, and gather together representatives and see if there's what rises out of that. Especially if you get kind of a convergence of some of the stuff from planning, code enforcement, and some of the businesses, and something like Downtown Everett Association, if they can agree on either some criteria or some specific items, we're more likely to get something done.
And might we ask a question later of the new Everett Chamber, who's going to be at the regular council meeting? And might they be another player in this conversation?
They might.
Yep. And it might help diffuse the blame that might happen where businesses are reluctant to complain about another one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I definitely want to make sure anything we do here doesn't have any unintended consequences for business owners, for tenants, for building owners, or for the city, of course. So, yeah, I think getting all the people at the table to discuss would be a great idea.
Yeah, I think it's probably worth us recognizing explicitly that we know running a business is hard.
Yeah.
There are difficult times, interest rates are high, construction, repair, insurance, all very high. So if we come at that, understanding that and focusing only on the things where we, carrots as much as possible and very few sticks, but when we need it, maybe we'll be successful.
Great. Thank you. So next on our agenda is the item to discuss committee priorities and a 2025 policy work plan. I'm not sure if I'm hearing, I think I'm hearing that storefront vacancies and downtown revitalization might be one of those policy priorities and work plan things. But I'd love to open it up for further discussion.
Definitely that, especially considering what has been also currently happening in the metro sub-area plan for vitality and with hope and wellness and all of that, and how they do have a nice storefront and yet. So I'm just putting that out there because that's what I'm caring about. I know that we had on our list for probably a good long while, safety enhancements on Everett Mall Way. Don't know if we ever got to talk about that ever in the past year and a half.
Yeah, there have been a few comments, some ideas, some discussions of those. I mean, there's a limited amount we can do for a
Yeah.
6-lane plus turn lane thing, but there was those discussions about the far right lanes being turn and transit. And I think the neighborhood was positive about that, and that seemed like that was a possibility. I mean, just because there are long, long crossing distances there between lights, and yet lots of people on both sides.
Do you want to keep that on the list, at least to mention it once a year?
Yes, and maybe there is that study going to go on with respect to Vision Zero.
Right?
So, and speed limits, so those things do tie together to this. And
There's a lot of new construction in that area as well, like Fourth and Everett Mall Way, and the possibility for the New Horizons, the old hotel next to the mall.
New Start,
Yeah.
New Start?
Yeah, New Start
Something
Center.
like that. Yeah, I think that the plan on that, I think, is October, November this year to open, something like that, so. And then, of course, further developments at the mall, that's gonna
Right.
be expanding. So, yeah, lots going on at that end, but also farther west, many blocks west. And that's that area with lots of traffic, lots of speeds, wide road, with very few places to cross. So I think all that stuff together, but the Vision Zero may be a good chance to marshal some real statistical kind of study there to figure out what to do with the speeds. Because it isn't just a matter of shutting down speed limits, because that doesn't do a lot by itself. And how that would interact with, for example, the far right lanes being restricted, I'd like to see progress on that. So a
Great.
good thing for this committee to do, I think, for sure.
Sure. Yeah, and and then our next agenda topic is also to copy and paste some of our old agenda topic suggestions. So I wanted to make sure we're differentiating between our ongoing work plan and a goal for the year of having a new policy dedicated to XYZ, as opposed to like a monthly check-in on a new ordinance that's coming before us in a couple of weeks, or just kind of like a one-time briefing discussion item. So I'm not sure, I would love to talk about traffic and safety, but I'm not sure if at this point Vision 2050 is now on the desks of staff and there wouldn't be space for council input.
You mean Vision Zero stuff with the head
Yes,
safety?
yeah.
There is Vision 2040. with
VSRC,
the-
yep.
Yeah, 1050. There will be space for inputs later. I mean, they've been doing outreach, they're doing the analysis work. A lot on Evergreen and Broadway, I know, but maybe also Everett Mall Way. And secondary arterial speeds, all that stuff's happening. I'll check back when there's a plan to come to council and maybe come back through the committee when I think there's inputs that could be made.
Yeah.
There's also, sorry, but I'm taking it. The TAC, Transportation Advisory Committee, they are doing a lot of the work, and perhaps, I'm pretty sure one of them would probably want to come in and give a better briefing on it than I ever could. Or at least a discussion, and, because, I mean, they do this, they do a lot of the work with staff as volunteers. I hear about it. I appreciate it, but I know that I don't give like fantastic reports. And so I am not differentiating between the two items that you talked about differentiating. But TAC is doing amazing, and they're doing a lot of the work.
Do you remember the timing when we might see some things from the Vision Zero kinds of research? That was just a little ways out, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that grant is like a total of 18 months, but we're maybe 6 months into it. I think it's probably like the end of this year.
Yeah.
But then that means there's probably a check-in point, midway or something, so.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I think when Vision Zero decision points come up, if that could come back to committee, through committee for discussion and input, then after the 18 months or so, then we'll be able to pat ourselves on the back.
Well, and once again, there might be an opportunity, if we get a little bit better beat on it, to talk to some of these businesses of different types and say, what kinds of things are working for you? What are the things that are really troublesome for you? Is it particular high-speed cars? Is it turns? Is it pedestrians that are, can't walk, don't want to walk the half a mile to a light, that sort of thing? I don't know. I'm sure I'd be surprised at some of those things.
Great. Another idea I had for a policy work plan for the year was to, I first need to remind myself of what our current policies are for CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design. And I think that could be something that would be a citywide policy work for different parks or maybe different areas that have the no sit, no lie zones or buffer zones to help with just having a physical space that's a crime deterrent. So I would need to refresh my memory on what policies we have in place already, and then if there's space to implement policy and codify it to have minimum requirements for those types of things. The last time I looked into it, I believe it was SeaTac, the city of SeaTac has some, like a codified policy on their CPTED requirements, and other cities have some looser policies. So I think that there's space there to implement something.
Yeah.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Nothing more from me.
Great. Great.
Sorry, and then we're not only built environment, but parks. So, we're putting that together. I'm just bringing it up because, well, I don't know.
Well, I think it deserves a lot of attention. I mean, it's getting increasingly important, developments and the density is higher, so the parks are heavily used. I know I see a lot around the Silver Lake Loop Trail and the new playground there. Those things are being very heavily used, and that's the thing we've got to do right now, is to provide that kind of recreation. And of course, in your District 4, that's a particular problem where there just isn't as much. The ratio is not a couple of neat places, and then there's a lot of spaces between them without as much of that as we'd like. So that deserves attention.
Yeah, I think I was going somewhere else. Like, yes, CPTED, yeah, parks, but are there other policy type things towards parks and whatnot to be thought about right now as we're describing this list?
I mean, we have on our upcoming agenda items, check-ins about the PROS plan, the Parks, Recreation, Open Space Plan. I think before we had asked for like a check-in on which maintenance projects were coming up, or playground replacement projects, so we can kind of stay in the loop of which park's next for improvement. So that's been helpful. There, with the park rangers park ranger program elimination, there might be space for policy work, but it seems like the department has already figured that out by now, so I'm not sure that's a need.
There was a discussion potentially about neighborhood assistance for opening and closing gates, because that was something the park rangers did and is not, I guess not now being done, at least the park rangers aren't there to do it. And so there were discussions, I think, of potential negotiations for collective bargaining or some sort of agreements. So that, I think, is one piece. And then looking forward to all these things as they are affected by the comprehensive plan that we're working on, and potential things like, well, at Walter Hall Park, some potential soccer field development and recreational opportunity there that is sort of dependent on other things that we're doing, like the stadium activity. So, and interestingly enough, both those things are coming up tonight, a parks vote and one on funds for more of the planning for the multi-use sports stadium. So, I'm not sure how we gather all those together. I'll look to your guidance on that.
I also wanted to mention, I was at the Parks Board meeting, and we were discussing bathrooms and locks, and the rangers would also be in charge of opening and closing the bathrooms. There's a possibility of new locks being put in place, but, for the future, so that they'll lock automatically. But
Electronically. So
Right.
you could program them to be
Right.
open and closed, yeah.
and it was brought to my attention that our parks bathrooms are closed during the season, and so that wasn't always the case, at least not for all of the parks, so I'm not sure if, but our one public restroom facility is open and will continue to be open. I saw it being worked on yesterday or the other day, so I don't know what was going on. I didn't ask any questions, but bathrooms at parks.
There are porta potties in some of those places where there were otherwise bathrooms, and I'm assuming that's because some of those are closed for maintenance or closed seasonally. I don't really know.
Yeah, I think this year, so some are closed for the winter, like a handful. Others are open via park custodians or facility custodians supporting that work. So ones that are open, this is a December conversation, so kind of through the winter and into the coming year. Forest Park, Langus Park, Jackson, Legion, Cash Park, Rotary Park. Camp Patterson and Phil Johnson have a keypad. So they use that keypad for rentals. So they get the code to unlock it while they're there. Or users, I guess. I don't know if that they're rentals necessarily, but users. And then ones that are closed through the winter. I don't know when that ends. I mean, it feels like winter right now, so I assume they're still closed. But Garfield Park, Wiggums Hollow, Lowell, and Upper Howarth. Some have a porta potty, so they're serviced and available. That's Thornton A. Sullivan, Haug Homestead, and Walter E. Hall Park, skate park. And they were at this time working on making the plan for all of that, basically. But it was expected to be on track by mid-December, so I assume this is kind of the current state. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Did we decide on?
I don't know if we decide on anything, but I'm glad to know the status of the park bathrooms.
Yeah, I think the bathrooms.
I know that wasn't like the main direction, but like, you're like, they're all closed. And I was like, I think I have an email that says they're not all closed. So anyways, a lot of detail. I have vacant storefronts and downtown revitalization on the list, Evermall Way pedestrian safety, SEPTED policy development. I think I put pros plan update because you had mentioned that it was on the old one, but I think there's other stuff maybe that you want to make sure doesn't get lost either. And I didn't necessarily, I can copy those all over
Sure.
onto this.
Maybe not all of them, yeah, the
Okay.
list is pretty long here, but I did want to make sure we're differentiating between like our ongoing kind of standing meeting topic of a
Totally.
policy goal for the year, and then also updates and briefings about restrooms and other fun stuff. So on the long list, one we can cross off because we're awesome. Everett Chamber of Commerce implementation, which is going to be tonight. So we can take that off the list. Vacant storefronts, code and policy discussion, so we can keep working on that. And then after the comp plan is passed, staff will be more available to help out.
Yes.
Alcohol impact areas discussion. Keep?
You brought that
Keep-
up.
Yeah, yes, please.
Great. SEPTED, work in an educational workshop. I think it would be good to start with the, what is SEPTED? SEPTED 101, and then that can help inform work moving forward. Park fencing and gates is on the list. Economic development, I know next month we have the year in review from Dan Ernest on the list. Do you think he will need the whole hour?
No.
I think we can add another, add one more thing to next month. Vacancy tax and requirements for facade maintenance, I think we can we can just eliminate the vacancy tax portion for now. I don't think there's a necessary appetite for that.
So is vacant storefronts the right wording?
Yes,
Okay. Does it need facade maintenance as part of it, or is it understood?
it's understood.
It's a,
Yeah.
no space, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and Word changes facade into the cute C with a little tail.
As- I really should remember what it's called.
Ex-old goose.
Starts with a C. Soledad, something like that. I speak French.
Cedilla is one of the things, but I'm not sure if that's right. I don't really speak French, so. 1 year in high school, I had nothing.
Croissant, that's all I got.
S'il vous plaît.
Comprehensive plan economic development strategy update, is that, so that, and there's also comprehensive plan for parks update, but will those be topics that are covered in our committee of the whole?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, so we can take those off. Park safety recommendations. I'm not quite sure what that means.
I think that may have, I only think of this because it came up today. I might be wrong, but I think it might relate to when you guys last talked about the soda ordinance and we added Jackson and another park to the list. And at the time,
Not Garfield, Clark.
Clark, yeah. At the time, we had talked about, well, if those two are on the list, what about all the others? We should really, maybe talk about if that's the right tool for park safety, what are the tools? Anyways, it should probably stay on the list,
Okay.
long story short.
Great.
Yeah. And it might also, shootings in parks, fencing in parks. I had
Yeah, they're kind of,
a question about James J. Hill Park and like who pays for fencing around parks. This particular one I find disturbing, but
it's a smaller park than you'd think. So some of the fencing may be related to BNSF.
Right.
But it's good to have on the list.
yeah, razor wire. I didn't think that was allowed in downtown Everett. But
Also on the list is economic development year in review, so we can probably put a nice little check mark on that after next month's meeting. Everett Mallway traffic calming.
Right.
Yes.
And, I mean, I'd like to see that as a broader discussion about traffic calming along Evergreen and pretty much any north-south main thoroughfare.
that kind of goes with Vision Zero is my thought. It's all wrapped up
Great.
together.
Yes. BNSF Bond Street project briefing. Permitting process and online resources for development. I think that might have been from the other committee. I'm not quite sure what it's referring to.
That's coming from the Built Environment Committee, not Parks and Quality of Life.
Right.
And part of it arose from Councilmember Zarlingo asking about just innovative ideas for permitting and then also kind of how the process works. And
There's been a lot that has happened in our permitting department to make things more efficient. But I don't know that we have heard the actual details of it. And like, I don't know if we wanted that either. It was like, take me through a permitting process. Let's say I ever wanted to do this and I'm a business and just how irate am I going to get? Or how pleasant is this?
Senior Executive Director Templeman has been working really hard on that, and the mayor has increased staff for that, and we've budgeted more for that. Those fix a lot of problems, and I think that department's again, working better. But there are other things we've looked at as well, looking closer. Basically, what I've done is to look closer at some of what happens in the process of this permitting, and are people getting the right kind of feedback at the right time? Are we asking the right questions? Are we insisting on the appropriate things for completeness? Because a lot of times people getting mad is finger pointing that isn't very productive. And I think some of the time it's because the applicants don't know as much as we'd like them to know, and we don't know necessarily to ask for that all at the right stage. So reducing the amount of heartburn in that is really the goal. And I think it's gotten a lot better, and there's more can be done.
Yeah, and I think there's been, like you said, there's been a lot of investments put into that department,
Yes.
so sharing that good news, I think, would be great. Would there be enough time between now and next month's meeting for staff to prepare a briefing?
oh my gosh, I think we might be able, it might be timely to do Vision Zero stuff in April. March for permitting processes. I don't know. I mean, I'll find out. Yep.
Great. Then comprehensive plan periodic up to date for transportation element, which could be moved over to committee of the whole, and that's our list.
Okay. Yeah, I think that one would be good for committee of the whole, because it is just so broad, and no reason to just duplicate it.
Yeah, and I think we wanted to use committee of the whole for the comp plan so that we're all, so then they don't have to give multiple
Right.
briefings and whatnot. Is there anything on this list that folks would like to supplement for next month's meeting?
What's on next month's meeting? We have
Economic
Dan,
Development Year in Review with Dan.
and then a possible, the words we just said.
Permitting processes.
Okay. Should we pick a backup for if permitting won't work out?
No.
I guess we can add maybe further our discussion about storefront vacancy codes. We can all-
Yeah,
Yeah.
read the literature in chapter 16, which you have printed in front of you, and chapter 19, which is also probably, might be printed in our draft comprehensive plan, which I brought but didn't double check. So we may already have some of that printed, but chapter 19 is definitely in there, but it's very long and laborious, and trying to figure out everything about it. So, yeah, homework.
Homework.
And then we can come back being like, yeah, I could run the department, shoot. Because we'll know all about chapter 19. Just kidding, everybody.
All right, everybody, it is 5:58 and we are adjourned. Thank you.